Let's turn our attention from the football field to the what possibly could be divorce court or just simply social media. We turn and say good morning to family law attorney Lené DeRudder this morning. Lené, thank you for joining me here in Memphis. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
We often talk about on this program how social media causes strife among friends and family, but we've never really done a deep dive on marriage. And I would assume social media can do plenty of harm in that as well.
Absolutely. It can. There's different aspects of social media of how it can affect your marriage. And ultimately, it becomes evidence if you're going through a divorce, most of the time, more times than not, right? And so social media can be a temptation. It can also be a distraction that takes away from your focus on your family or your spouse, and then that becomes an issue. It also can be a tool that your spouse ends up using because they find out you're not being completely honest with them about your activities or who you're around or what you're doing. So there's a lot of pitfalls to social media that people really need to be mindful of and how it can affect their marriage.
In your experience as a family law attorney, is social media the cause of divorces or is it a symptom of what's leading to the divorce? More times than not.
I would say it's a symptom. Yeah, I get asked this often. What's the number one cause? What causes divorces? How often does this cause a divorce? These things like social media, adultery, finances, politics, those are all symptoms, right? They're all the causes of the divorce are much deeper than that. It's the lack of trust. It's the lack of connection. It's the lack of relationship. It's disconnect, anger, bitterness. It's all those emotions, those things that get down a little bit deeper, but it manifests in different ways. So, with social media, if you've been struggling in your divorce, you've got kids and you've got work and you've got, just the daily, race of life, and you start growing apart from your spouse, social media is so easy to connect to. You can sit at, you can sit in a doctor's office, you can sit at your kid's soccer game, and you start communicating with people that, might be, friends from college, friends from high school, old boyfriends, old girlfriends. And you start reconnecting, you start feeling that void that you have in your marriage. And so that's where we start getting into trouble, right? And it's an easy, quick tool, too. It's instant gratification.
Yeah, family law attorney Lené DeRudder joining us on Memphis Morning News. Not only that, but, and I guess it applies to marriages as well, but I see where people will sometimes go after somebody else that they know or are good friends with, and I guess in this case, we can apply it to marriage. It becomes a very passive-aggressive tool.
It does. It does. I mean, I will tell you, I've experienced that, and, it's very difficult, particularly if, let's say, it's a spouse of your husband's best friend, and they are using it to come after you, and now you've created some drama around that. There's an issue around that. And so if you and your spouse are not on the same page, that could be problematic. If you are on the same page, then you're probably okay. But yeah, I mean, social media can get very aggressive, and you see it manifesting on the political side of things where people are very, very passionate. There's not a lot of filters, and they I like to say their inside head voice comes out, and that sparks a lot of emotion and intensity. And if your spouse is involved with that, sometimes you might be fully supportive of it. The other times you might be completely embarrassed, and now you're creating issues in the relationship.
What are some things we've talked about what the consequences are, but for those that are in a marriage and are active in social media, what are some steps people can take to insulate themselves? I mean, not everything is foolproof, but what are some things they can give themselves a better chance to be able to balance social media and marriage?
Well, I think, one of the things is that you've got to disconnect from it, right? You've got to, someone had said, it's very addicting. And I think you have to learn to put it down and connect with your spouse. Have a conversation with them. Don't be looking at your phone. Don't be getting on Instagram or Facebook, because it becomes that distraction. And we're also, attention deficit these days because there's so much going on. So make that space where it's not a distraction. I think the other part is if there's things that you see on your spouse's Facebook that bother you, have a conversation about it. I mean, address it, talk about it. Don't let it fester and grow and then become something bigger than it should have been. And then I think also, know what you want to use your social media for. Be very clear on, what's the purpose of your social media, and connect your spouse into that. I mean, I'm a very active social media user. I have a personal and I also have a professional Facebook page. But my husband is very involved with both of them. And so if I'm posting things, personally, I tag him, and so that he's always a part of my social media use too.
Oh, it's terrific advice. Lené, thank you so much for joining me here in Memphis. And next time you make the rounds, please don't be a stranger. We'd love to have some additional discussions.
Oh, I'd love to. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too, Lené. DeRudder on Memphis Morning News, family law attorney.